Speak Amazon domain name equals news greater than the year is 1692. Winter holds New England in a frozen grip. In the small, isolated settlement of Salem Village, life is hard. The world is a battleground. God on one side. The devil on the other. For the Puritans of Massachusetts Bay Colony, this was not a metaphor. It was a terrifying reality. They saw Satan's work in every misfortune. A failed crop. A sick child. A shadow in the woods. They built their walls high and their prayers long. But they feared the greatest enemy was already inside. Inside the home of Reverend Samuel Parris, a strange sickness was taking root. His 9-year-old daughter, Betty, began to act strangely. His niece, Abigail Williams, soon followed. They would hide under furniture. They would make noises like animals. Their bodies would contort into impossible shapes. They screamed as if pricked by invisible pins. Local Dr. William Griggs was summoned. He examined the girls. He found no sign of fever. He found no physical ailment he could name. His diagnosis was grim. He declared the cause was not natural. The evil hand is upon them. These words were a spark in a room full of gunpowder. The community demanded answers. Who was tormenting these children? Under intense pressure from the magistrates, the afflicted girls began to name names. The first were predictable. They were outsiders. Sarah Good, a destitute woman who begged door to door. Sarah Osborne, an elderly woman caught in a property dispute. And Tituba, the Parris family's enslaved servant from the Caribbean. These 3 women were arrested. They were brought to the meeting house for examination. Magistrates John Hawthorne and Jonathan Corwin led the questioning. Sarah Good and Sarah Osborne denied everything. But Tituba, perhaps terrified or seeking to save herself, confessed. Her confession was a cascade of dark imagery. She spoke of a tall man from Boston, dressed in black. A man who served her a witch cake made of rye. He presented a book. She saw 9 names signed within it, some in blood. She spoke of flying through the winter air on a stick. Suddenly, the abstract fears of the Puritans had a face. They had a narrative. The devil had made a pact with their neighbors. A hunt was on. What began as a flicker of suspicion was about to become an inferno. The colony's leaders in Boston established a special court. The Court of Oyer and Termine. To hear and to determine. This new court made a fateful decision. It chose to accept a controversial form of evidence. It was called spectral evidence. This was the linchpin of the entire tragedy. Spectral evidence was testimony from an afflicted person. They claimed to see the ghost, or specter, of the accused witch. This specter would torment them, bite them, and pinch them. It was a perfect weapon for an accuser. How could an accused person prove their spirit was not attacking someone? It was impossible to defend against. An accusation became its own proof. On June 2, Bridget Bishop was the first to be tried by the new court. She was an outspoken tavern owner who wore clothes considered too colorful. She was an easy target. Accusers convulsed in her presence. They swore her specter attacked them. Bishop maintained her innocence to the very end. It did not matter. On June 10, she was taken to Gallows Hill. She was the first to hang. A terrifying precedent was set. The floodgates of accusation were thrown open. But the devil was not the only force at play in Salem. There were older, more human demons at work. Greed, resentment, and bitter social division. Salem Village was not Salem Town. The village was a poor, agrarian community. The town was a prosperous, commercial port. Village farmers felt exploited by the wealthy merchants of the town. This rivalry created deep fault lines. Look closely at the accusers. Many, like the powerful Putnam family, were from Salem Village. Look at the accused. Many, like the skeptical Porter family, had ties to Salem Town. Accusations followed these fractures with chilling precision. Old family feuds and disputes over land ownership found a new, deadly outlet. An enemy in a property dispute could become a witch overnight. This wasn't just about faith. It was about power. It was about settling scores. The colony itself was on unstable ground. Years earlier, England had revoked its charter. Massachusetts was in a state of political chaos. There was no legitimate, recognized government. This power vacuum created deep anxiety. A society adrift felt vulnerable. It was desperate for order, even a brutal one. The witch hunt provided a common enemy. A way to unify a fractured people against a perceived threat. Yet, another culprit may have been lurking, unseen. A biological trigger for the madness. This suspect was not a person. It was a fungus. Its name is Claviceps purpurea. We know it as ergot. Ergot grows on rye, the staple grain of the Salem diet. In certain weather conditions, it thrives. The summer of 1691 had been unusually wet and stormy. Perfect conditions for the fungus to spread. When consumed, ergot-infected bread can be a powerful poison. The symptoms of ergotism are horrifying. Muscle spasms. Violent convulsions. Vivid hallucinations. A crawling sensation on the skin, as if being bitten by insects. Compare these symptoms to the documented afflictions of the Salem girls. The similarities are undeniable. The choking sensations. The feeling of being pricked by pins. The contortions and visions. Could the entire nightmare have been sparked not by Satan, but by spoiled bread? A biological poison, interpreted through a lens of extreme religious belief. It is a chilling possibility. A hidden truth that reframes the entire event. By the autumn of 1692, the accusations had spiraled out of control. The accusers grew bolder. They pointed fingers at the most respected members of the community. Wealthy merchants. Ministers. Even the wife of the colonial governor, William Phips. The public began to have doubts. If anyone could be a witch, then perhaps no one was. The intellectual elite started to push back. Reverend Increase Mather, a powerful Puritan leader, openly questioned spectral evidence. He argued it was a tool of the devil, not a tool of justice. His words were a turning point. It were better that 10 suspected witches should escape, than that one innocent person should be put to death. Governor Phips finally acted. He dissolved the court of Oyer and Terminer. He barred the use of spectral evidence in future trials. The fire, starved of its fuel, began to die. Those who remained in jail were slowly released. The Great Salem Hysteria was over. In the aftermath, a heavy silence fell. 19 men and women had been hanged on Gallows Hill. At least 5 more, including an infant, died in the squalor of the jail. One elderly farmer, Giles Corey, was pressed to death with heavy stones. He died for refusing to enter a plea in a court he knew was unjust. Years passed. A deep sense of shame settled over the colony. In 1697, the General Court held a day of fasting and reflection for the tragedy. Judge Samuel Sewell stood before his congregation. He publicly confessed his blame and shame for his role in the trials. In 1706, Ann Putnam Jr., one of the most prolific accusers, also offered an apology. She claimed she had acted not out of malice, but from a great delusion of Satan. So what were the real demons of Salem? The story is not a simple tale of superstition. It is a perfect storm. It was a community on edge, primed by fear of the wilderness and political chaos. It was a society poisoned by internal rivalries and bitter resentments. It was a legal system that accepted fantasy as fact. And perhaps, it was a hidden sickness, a fungus in the daily bread that twisted minds and bodies. Salem's tragedy is a timeless warning. It reveals the terrifying speed at which fear can dismantle a community. It shows how easily belief can be weaponized. The hidden truth of Salem is not about witches. It is about us. It is about the darkness that lies not in the supernatural, but deep within the human heart, waiting for the right conditions to be unleashed. /Amazon domain/speak